our one and only distinguished Toastmaster Hashim Haleem to speak about the art of script writing for a winning speech. Welcome, Hashim bhai.
Thank you, Division O Director DTM Shanil. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session on the art of script writing for a winning speech. Now, first off, let me ask you all a question to start with. What do you think? Why do you think this session is called script writing? What's the difference between script writing and well, just writing out an essay or any normal writing that we do? I'd request you to probably put it into the chat if you can, and then we'll see what kind of responses we get. Or if you'd rather unmute, I think somebody's switched on their cameras. You can unmute and just shout out what you think is. Yeah, Sunita, I think you're raising your hand. Shiva says script writing is writing towards a specific topic. Okay, good start there, Shiva. Anyone else has any ideas? What's the difference between script writing and just normal writing or writing in
writing?
Yeah.
I think script writing would come with a lot of. It's a strategized writing. There has to be, like we know in a speech, the transitions. There has to be a connection to the points. The dots have to connect. You can't go past, come in front, and future, and all that. There has to be a proper way with that you write it out.
So a structure, a proper methodology is what Sunita is saying. Guest has said script writing is for a purpose. You're all going towards it. Okay. When we talk about script or script writing, the first thing that came to my mind was like movies and screenplay. This is the first thing that came to my mind when I hear the word script writing. So when you are writing for a speech that you're going to perform on a stage, basically what you're writing for is for the whole entire visual as well as audible experience for your audience, not just about what you write and what people read. They're going to see that on stage. They're going to experience that. So you're bringing the not only the whatever is happening in your script per se, but you're also bringing in the internal expressions of that person, the emotions that they're experiencing, the scenes that are playing out, and this has to be done by you on stage. So you're basically writing for both seeing, hearing, feeling, everything put together. So this is not for a screen, but it's for a stage. So it's similar to writing a screenplay for a movie. So you're basically writing the screenplay for your speech. So things have to unfold in front of the audience on stage. And that's why calling it script writing is a step above just writing an essay or a piece or an article, right? So today we're going to focus on a little bit more on what differences we make in the way we write, the way we structure, the way we organize, the way we use our language in order to enhance our speeches for the stage. Now, this can be applied to any kind of speeches, any kind of presentations that you prepare. However, just to keep us focused, I'm going to take the examples of international speech and probably make it, let's say we're preparing an international speech for a contest. That's going to be our focused area. And we're going to focus on that and see how we can enhance the ideas that we have in order to make a winning, impactful visual experience for our audience on stage. All right, so let me just share my screen and we can get started immediately. So let's go to script writing. Let me share and let's go back right to the top. If I can. Yep, here we are. All right, thank you to the PR manager of the district for having put me 3 times on this flyer. Wonderful. All right, so the first thing, before we decide to write anything, we have to decide what we're going to write about. And this is a dilemma that we always face. Many people would ideally come up with this this crisis. Okay, what am I going to write about? What subject should I talk about? Will the audience like what I'm going to say, or is it just something I like? So simple technique. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because my focus is going to be on the writing part of it. But if you're going to select what you're going to write on, there are 3 things that you need to think about. The first one is the topics that you know that you're credible to speak about. Credibility is very important when you're talking about something, right? So what are you credible to speak about? Things that you've learned or things that you know about, like your work or your education. All of these are things that you already know about. Things that you've experienced by personal first-hand experience. These are things you know, you've been through, so you're credible to speak about that. The next thing is topics that you love. There are a lot of things that you're passionate about. You may be passionate about skydiving, for example, or football, or traveling the world. These are things that you may be passionate about, that you love. I am an IT consultant, so the things that come into my mind when you say topics you love are artificial intelligence, Java programming. Yeah, I can see people already running away from the Zoom call. No. Those are topics I love. Okay, so topics you know, topics you love. And the third important part is topics your audience would care about. So it's got to be of something of interest to them, something that adds value to them, something that's going to keep them on their seats for 7 minutes or 8 minutes, whatever time you take. And that is going to keep them attracted to your speech. So now we've got these 3 circles: topics you know, topics you love, and topics you think the audience would care about, where you're able to find a convergence, where all 3, that you know about that topic, you love that topic as well, and you think the audience is going to care about it. These are your select topics that would be possible for you to write about. Now, let me give you an example. Topics that you know and topics that you love. Okay, for example, if we take the story of a long lost relative of yours who suffered from cancer, and your story is about how they came out of that. Now, the very fact that they overcame cancer may not be of interest to anybody else or to everybody for that matter. If you go very technical into it, they give all the medical background of it and all the things that happened from day 1 to day 52, that may not be of interest to people. But if you talk about the struggle and how they were able to come out of it and withstand it, the willpower that they had and the fight back that they gave, now that's a general topic. Now that could be something that your audience cares about as well, right? So it's about identifying the correct part of the story that you want to talk about. So the next time that you decide on topics, list down your topics, tick mark topics you know, topics you love, and topics your audience cares about. And where you have 3 ticks, that's probably where you would want to go for your topic selection. All right, so let's move on quickly. The first thing that you would think about in a topic is, what is the message that you want to give your audience? Because in the end, that's what the audience leaves your speech with. There's a saying which says that you start with the end in mind. So the end result of your speech is not the last line of the speech. No, the end result of your speech is what your audience leaves with. Once your 7.5 minutes or 7 minutes are over and they clap and they go back, what is it about your speech that they're going to remember? Right? What's going to stay in their mind? That's the message of the core of that speech, right? Now, when you select a message for that speech, it has to be universal. It cannot be just for yourself. It cannot be particular to an area. It cannot be particular to a group of people. It cannot be particular to a genre or a specific profession or anything of that sort. It's got to be universal. Which is why if you look at many of the international winning speeches, their messages are general morals, usually. There's a moral associated with it. It adds value of some sort, right? The third important thing is it has to influence or change the way the audience think. You're not going to come up with something that nobody has heard of before as a message. It's always going to be something positive, something that's helpful, etc. It doesn't have to be something new. But your story should just give a different perspective of it. Right? For example, let's look at, we had Ramona Smith with her boxing gloves, and she came up and gave a speech about still standing, means never give up. For sure, this isn't the first time you've heard a speech about never give up. But it could be the first time that you heard it the way that she presented it, right? That was the difference. It wasn't the message itself. The message was something you've heard before, but it was packaged and presented in such a way that it influenced the way that you think about it, So that's how you craft your message. But there's got to be something more to it, right? It can't be just this basic and simple, otherwise everybody would be acing it. Yes, when you talk about script writing, the secret part of every message that has been successful is to work hope into your message. Now, what is hope? Hope simply means that you present your message in such a way that it adds value to the audience, gives them the opportunity to apply your message and improve in some way or the other, or take things to the next level. That's what hope does. And this is across every single World Championship winning speech over the last, you can download for as many years as you want. You can go as far back as you want. It was always, always, always about hope. Many years ago, there was a great speaker called Mohammad Gehtani, for example. Not many years ago, but quite a few years ago, he had words have power. And what he spoke about was that by using your language, you're able to influence people or save people or create change. That's what words do. You had Dhananjay Hetirachi who said, I see something in you. His speech was that you are special. And if you have good people around you, they will make you feel special. So everyone is special. Ramona Smith, still standing, never give up. That even if you have trouble after trouble in your life, you can still come out of it, right? You had so many. If you check any of those speakers who have spoken about Aaron Beverly's with the Indian wedding, the speech was, despite differences, you can feel together. So he was giving hope of unity despite all the differences. So whatever their experience was, the message was crafted in such a way that it provided hope to the people. So the next time you decide to craft a message, work it in such a way that it gives hope. So what is the script writing difference between just having a message and having a message which gives hope? Now, let me give you an example here. If you want to say that I worked hard and I was able to achieve, success in my career. This is the crux of your story, and you are building stories to say how you struggled through tough times and you worked hard and you got that promotion and you were able to achieve everything that you wanted. This is your story. So your message is, I worked hard and I was able to achieve success. It's not a very fancy message, is it? So let's work hope into this, put it into the perspective of the audience and say, if you put everything into what you're doing, then anything is possible. Now, all of a sudden, a sentence which was very specific towards working hard and achieving success and doing things became a universal statement, which gives hope to whatever you're doing. So you put everything into it and anything is possible, right? So you work, when you craft your message, remember to work hope into it, and hope is universal, right? So that's how you craft a winning message. And a winning message is very critical for the success of your speech. Now, if you all remember, or for those who have been in the old path, where old competent communicator manual, wherein you had the project 3 which said specific and general purpose. The idea was, once you decide upon your message, then every part of your speech has to connect with that message. So it's important to work your message first, even before you start scripting your speech, right? So the secret is to work hope into your message, and then your message matters to everyone, right? All right, so let's move on quickly. Yeah. This is about the content that you're going to put into your speech once you've decided upon your message. Now, it's like a wonderful chocolate cake. All right. A chocolate cake is meant to make you happy. It's meant to satisfy your cravings, fill you up. But there is one definite thing, and you use it at all your celebrations. It brings up your feelings, makes you happy, enjoy. All of that happens when you have a wonderful chocolate cake. But there's one definite thing that a chocolate cake does. All the contents that you put into the chocolate cake, it makes you fat. That's exactly what it does. That's what your speech content has to do as well. But the fat here stands for feel, act, and think. when you decide upon what content has to go into your speech, you need to answer these three questions. Through your speech, what do you want the audience to feel? So what emotions are you trying to touch? Okay. So for example, if you have, let us talk about a speech where your simple theme is that time is precious. So you want to use it to spend it with your loved ones. You have a story which talks about, how you used to spend a lot of time with your grandma when you were a kid. But now after you've started working, you left the country, you left your hometown, and you've moved out here to the UAE. You don't get time to spend with them, and okay, whatever it may be. Picture this. What do you want your audience to feel? You want them to feel that they're missing some people. You want them to feel that they could be with their loved ones. You want them to feel that emotion. So be clear about 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is what I want my audience to feel. Second point, act. We all talk about call to action has to be there. Call to action has to be there. What exactly is this call to action? It means once that speech is done, what do you want your audience to do? So in the example that I just gave you about spending time with your loved ones, the action you want them to take is maybe, meet up with their loved ones, or take the time to call their, long lost friends, or their teacher from high school, or their neighbors who they have not spoken to, or some relatives who have been estranged for many years, or just go back and visit them and spend time with them. That's the action you want them to take. So be clear about what exactly do you want. So, and then you strategize your points such that it leads to this action. The last one is think. What is this change that you want to bring into their mindset? What is the thought that you want to put into their head through your message? In this case, it would be that their time is better spent with their loved ones than while away doing many other things. So they need to take out the time and spend time with their loved ones. That's time is precious. You don't get it back again. So use the time to spend. This is the thought that you want to put into their head. So when you decide upon, when you've got your message crafted out, remember these 3 points: the fact, feel, act, and think. What do you want them to feel? What action do you want them to take? What is the thought that you're putting into their head? And once you have clarity around this, then automatically you know which stories you want to put, you know which quotation will support you, you know how the points are to be structured, and have a good idea of now what your flow of your speech looks like. Are we ready to start writing the speech yet? Not yet. See, you've got your feel, act, think, you have an idea. Now you've got to put it all down. And my suggestion of how you're going to put it all down or visualize all of this is to create something known as a storyboard. It's a simple technique that you can use. Just put down everything that you've thought of so far. This is my message. Okay, I need something for the opening and closing. We'll come back to that later. Fair enough. What are my points? My points are point 1 and point 2. I'm going to support point 1 with this story. So in the example that we had spoken about earlier, my message is that time is precious and needs to be spent with your loved ones. That's my message. My point 1 is time once gone, you may not get again. So I have a story about my grandmother who died a couple of years ago. This was that. And then my transition. Next one is I'm going to talk about the time when I was so busy with work that I could not come home when, for a birthday party, and I missed that because I had a deadline to meet. Now that birthday party is never going to come again. So again, this is my point 2, that you don't replace it with other things which seem more materialistic, etc. So I have point 1, point 2. I know which story I'm going to put into it. What are my transition statements going to be? I want to put a quotation for that. Time and tide waits for no man. I'm going to put a call to action there. Use the time to spend with your loved ones. Call your grandparents today. Send a mail out to your long lost friend, etc. So I'm going to put all of this down into a storyboard before I start writing, and then I'm going to start filling these in. This is how a storyboard will help you decide upon exactly how to craft your script, so that you know exactly what you're going to put in there. Then it's just a matter of elaboration, cutting, and bringing it back down to size. This is a mind map. As you can see, there are many free tools that are available online that you can use. The one that I've made this with is a free tool called mindmup.com, MINDMUP. If you have a Google Drive, it's free to use, and you can create as many maps as you want and store it. It's a free tool that you can use. Do try it out. It's a very useful to visualize your ideas and put things into perspective. All right, very quickly, let's move on. Now, we spoke about stories, and from time immemorial, stories have been the way that messages have been shared. Whenever any news of any land or any war or any country was communicated, it was always communicated through stories. When we were kids, we had our grandparents and our folks tell us stories about kings and queens. But do you all remember what the purpose of those stories was? It was never the king or the queen or what happened there. The whole purpose of that story was to make a point, to put that moral into the kid. That's why those stories were told. We always knew that, right? So the best way to convey a point is to tell a story. And that's exactly what you should employ in your international speeches as well. Decide upon what your point is, tell a story to support that point, which makes it clear for the audience. And when they remember your story, what are they remembering? They're remembering your point. That's exactly what the purpose is. Believe me, stories are the best, irrespective of which age, what age your audience is in. You've heard your kids, if you've been around kids, they always, in the night, it's always, Daddy, can you tell me a story? No kid ever came up to you and said, Daddy, can you show me a PowerPoint? No, it's always been, can you tell me a story? So stories are the best way to make a point. Now, those stories which you heard when you were a kid, they always had kings, queens, powerful soldiers, powerful people, or very pious and very respectable people. They always had characters who were brought to life. And those characters form the pillars of those stories, right? So you had characters to remember. In your story, in your speech, to remember to describe your characters, the characteristics of that character. What was he like? What did he speak like? What was special about him? This has been always there. Now let's look at our dear friend or respectable Toastmaster, Dhananjay Hettiarachchi, the world champion who gave the speech, I See Something in You. If you remember his speech, he had his emotional mother, right? She was so emotional. She was shaking the cage of the cell in the jail. Even the police, even the cops were afraid of her. And he had the cool dad. It wasn't just dad. He had the cool dad. And then he had that the accountant Sam. He looked like a teddy bear. And then he had the gentle person at the back of the Toastmasters Club who had that. There was something special about him. So all of these characters, it wasn't just telling a name or putting a person there. There was something describing that character. There was, and when you bring characters into your speech, you not only use description, but when you give them a voice, when you give them an expression, a gesture, and when you give them dialogue, you bring in your vocal variety, you bring in your facial expressions. When you give them a position on stage, you're using the stage wisely, you're creating a halo effect there. So adding characters to your speech gives you ample opportunity to express your skills, express emotions, and bring out the range or the repertoire of skills that you have as a public speaker. So definitely remember that in your story, there should be characters and there should be brought to life. So what are the words in your speech that are going to allow you to bring that character to life? Are you giving him or her dialogues? Are you using descriptive language to show or portray what that person looks like, what that person's role is, importance is? And are you using their vocal variety and expressions to bring emotions to that particular moment of that speech, right? Also, when you script your speech, remember to incorporate all of these so that you're able to bring that character to life. The third thing about characters and stories is always be similar, not superior to the audience. Let me tell you this. Now, if you tell a story where, okay, when I was a kid, I came first in class, I was the winner of the 100-meter race, I got a gold medal in school, I got a gold medal in university, I was earning this many thousand dirhams, I bought a BMW car, and I have 3 cars in my garage. Nobody's going to like your story. Right? If you're going to just beat your own horn or blow your own horn rather, nobody is going to like your story. You want to be similar. So I went through this problem, and with the help of these, I was able to come out of it. Then people will listen to your story, right? It's like when you were back in school, There was always that kid who sat in the middle of the front row, who was a teacher's pet and scored 100 marks in every subject. I always had the answer to every question. All the teachers loved him. You remember that kid? Nobody liked that kid. Yeah, he was a kid who never got a girlfriend. All the girls used to speak to the boys at the back bench, and the same for the girls at the back bench. Right? Nobody liked that kid because everyone likes people who are similar, not superior. What that means is, don't be the hero of your own story. Yes, you succeeded, but you succeeded because a change happened at a time when there was a cure, and you found that cure either through speaking to somebody else or reading something or an experience that you had. So give the credit to that particular moment, whoever that was. Maybe that other person you spoke to who advised you, maybe the book you read, maybe the movie you saw, maybe an experience you had. Give credit to them. You be the one who changed. You be the one who was down and who was able to come up with that change, right? So you don't be the hero of your own story. Always give the credit to where it's due, and you be the one who has benefited from that and share that benefit with your audience. That's how you connect with your audience. Yeah, but Hashim, is creating a story that simple? It is, and I'm going to give you a model that you can apply for any story that you're ever going to write. Trust me, it works. It's called the 5C storytelling model, right? And every story that you would see, you can actually take up any speech from YouTube of Toastmasters and see it. Every story will have these 5 C's, even if it's a 3-sentence story or a 1 minute, 2 minute story, right? The 5 C's are: one is curiosity. What curiosity means is you have a few sentences which are bringing your audience into that particular story. We touched up upon the second C, which is characters. Every story has characters, at least one character, and yourself, so that will make it 2. Then there is a conflict. What I mean by conflict is that you have some trouble or some difficulty that you're going through. If there is no difficulty, there's no purpose in telling this, right? Because like we said, the message is about hope. So there has to be a difficulty which you're overcoming, and that's the message you're giving. With this, you can overcome this, follow this, then you will be able to overcome it yourself as well. So the conflict, and as you can see, I put the conflict on an arrow which is going up. So ideally you would start by introducing the conflict and then build it up to a point where it's very difficult. Then there is a cure. And like I said, you're not the hero. So the cure came from either somebody who advised you, somebody who helped you, maybe a book you read, maybe whatever, something that you saw, something that you read, or an experience that happened at that point of time. There is a cure, and after the cure, there is a change. And this change helps you move forward in your life. So some sentences to show how you changed. It's very important when it comes to, how your speech gets judged or evaluated. Show the change that happened because of this particular turning point. The cure is your turning point. After that, what you do in your life is your change. And make sure you give examples of your change. So the 5 C's, just to recap: curiosity, characters, conflict, cure, and change. And these are part of every story that you see. So definitely try to include these in your upcoming speech. Right? So when you script it, make sure you have sentences for each of these. It does not have to be separate sentences. It could be just one flow. Your whole speech could be done in 3 sentences or 2 minutes. That's completely up to you. Right? So let's move on to some more basics about what we put when we script a speech. So when we talk about speech purpose, why do you give a speech? There are 4 main reasons which Toastmasters mentions about, right? That you give a speech either to entertain, to inform, to persuade, or to inspire. These are the 4 types of speeches, or the 4 speech purposes. Now, that does not mean every speech has only one of these. Every speech could have all of these in different combinations. But the real good part about script writing is that you decide where you want to use these most effectively. Now, don't fret. I'm going to give you a format which will help you to apply these 4 principles at the right moments in your speech, which will help you get the desired impact from your audience. Right? So this is the basic chart of speech organization which Toastmasters talks about. On the left side, you can see opening, body, conclusion, basic. opening, body, and closing, right? The opening, as you know, is the introduction part, where it's roughly around 15% of the time that you have, right? So maybe around 45 seconds, 1 minute, whatever it may be. 15% roughly is what the opening is. Now, at this point of time, you want to do two things. One is you want to grab the audience's attention. We already know that. That's what the opening is meant for. So you want to be somewhat entertaining at this point of time. Entertaining does not mean humor, or does not mean tell a joke. Entertain just means get the audience's attention, keep them interested, bring something interesting, bring something shocking, bring something that would keep the audience engaged. In the second part of your introduction, you want to inform them about what's coming up next. Draw them into your story, draw them into your message, get them hooked onto it, right? So ideally, you would want to have sentences which entertain and sentences which inform in your opening. Now we move on to the body of the speech. The body of the speech, you know, you have your points. And how do we deliver our points? Through our stories, right? So I've given 3 here. You don't have to have 3 stories. You could have just one single story. That is completely up to you, depending upon the size of your story and how you are placing it. You could have maybe just 1 story or 2 stories. That's completely up to you. The big arrows are, of course, your transitions. Now, this forms the bulk of your speech, right? 70% of your speech. So here, obviously, you're telling them the story. So you're informing them of what happened. You want to keep them engrossed in your speech. You want to keep them engaged. So you have to be entertaining as well. So you will have some humor at appropriate times. You will have some adventure in your stories. You'll have descriptive words which keep them interested. You'll have some maybe questions to the audience, etc. The last part is you want to be persuasive. Here is where you're conveying your point to them. Persuasion is like a sales pitch, right? When you're trying to sell something to somebody, you're convincing them that your thought or your idea or your product, for that point, is what they need, right? Is what they want. So here you're trying to be persuasive. This is where your message to the audience comes in. Your call to action, etc., comes in here. When you go to the closing, you're completing your call to action, you're explaining your realizations, and then you're giving them the hardcore message. So here you're persuasive, and you want to inspire them to, you know, adopt your message and achieve something greater. So you're trying to be inspiring here. So this is how you could structure your scripting such that you're able to incorporate these techniques at the right places to have the maximum impact. Now, this is not enough. Script writing is all about decorating your speech such that you're able to maximize the impact that you have with your audience, right? The first point here is foundation phrase. Can anybody tell me some foundation phrases they have heard from Toastmaster speeches? Either you can put it in the chat or you could unmute yourself and just shout it out. Any famous foundation phrases?
I see something in you.
I see something in you. Absolutely right, DTM Harish. Anybody else has any foundation phrase that they have heard? Perhaps the most famous one, which is non-Toastmaster, is I have a dream. Yeah. Anyone knows who said that? I have a dream. Hearing something, but yeah.
With Martin Luther?
Martin Luther King Jr. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So most of the speeches that you hear will have some, you know, phrase which is repeated multiple times. For example, Ramona J. Smith, in her winning speech, she had "still standing," which she repeated multiple times. And even if you see Muhammad Ghaitani have "words have power." So these are all, you know, sentences that were repeated. If you see
one of those days. One of those days in.
Yeah, one of those days. That's it's just one of those days. Yeah, these are all words which are catchy. The core structure of a foundation phrase is that it's less number of words, but it has a certain ring to it. It has a certain rhythm to it, right? So it sounds good. It sounds memorable. And that's what makes a foundation phrase most effective. If you can make it memorable, something that the audience can easily remember and keep with them, then you have the maximum impact from that foundation phrase. The next one is write for the year. Now, what this means is Yeah, what this means is, all right, can I request if everyone could just mute for a bit until we have the next segue? Yeah, write for the ear specifically means you use sound words, words that sound good, because the difference between a speech that you're giving on stage or on screen, as we are doing here, and an article or something that you read, is that when you read it, you can reread it again and again until you get that impact, right? Or until you understand it. Whereas on stage is just one go. Once that sentence is over, it's over, right? So you've lost the opportunity there. So you want to make sure that you are able to grab the audience's attention, keep them interested, and have that impact with the sentences you write. Sound words. Now let me give you an example. If I were to say, I was driving down Sheikh Zayed Road and my tire burst and I had to park my car at the side. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Instead of that, I could say, I was driving down Sheikh Zayed Road, bang, my tire burst. The impact is different. The scene is the same, the words are the same, but just by using that sound word bang, all of a sudden, you've transformed that moment into an actual something that the audience can experience. It's the same if you want to say that, I jumped into the lake, the water was cold. You could say, splash, you jumped into the lake, brrr, oh, it was freezing. All of a sudden, just by changing a few words there, you've made that an entire scene which can be visualized, which can be felt, which can be heard and experienced by your audience. So when you try to when you're scripting your speech out, try to have places where you're able to create impact using sound words. Splash, bang, or you also have certain rhetoric devices which sound good, like alliterations, etc. When you're repeating a certain sound, all of these are meant to help you write for the ear. And decorating your speech with these kind of usages definitely attracts the audience, especially the ones who are more auditory in their senses, towards your speech, and helps you create impact as well. We already mentioned earlier, or rather I already mentioned earlier about dialogues. So when you put in dialogues, when you're scripting your speech, you're converting a narration to a dialogue, right? So you have two characters now, you have some voice modulation coming in. Again, so putting space for these in your script definitely adds a lot of value. And remember, it's not something you're going to convert when you're speaking. It has to be in your script for you to be able to perform it on stage. So when you are scripting it out, remember to try and convert, see where there is an opportunity for you to convert a statement into a dialogue, so that it adds value. And adding these sound words, etc., also makes your script more attractive. The power of 3, so converting things into I came, I saw, I conquered. If you have alliterations there, it has a certain nice rhythm to it. So there's a gentle flow of that energy when you're using these in the speech, and it creates moments on stage. So you patch it up with a pause and make a powerful statement there with the power of 3. Excellent. It helps you to create a lot of impact. When you're scripting, remember to have expressions and emotions. You have to give yourself time and space to do that on stage. And this is done when you are scripting it. So remember to see which sentences, which words will allow you to touch the emotions of your audience. So use words which are able to create scenes which will allow you to use that. And all of this is done when you're writing your speech, not after you've written your speech, right? So you have to find space there to make sure that you are able to put in emotions, give yourself opportunity for expressions. There are certain words, certain transitions that will allow you to, emote on stage, use your facial expressions, etc. But if those words are not there, or if that scene is just narrated out, then you don't get the opportunity to use your facial expressions. So you create those scenes when you're writing your stories, emotional scenes, emotional moments, and when you bring in characters, like for example, you bring in a sad story or a happy moment for example, with your mom or with your dad or with your children, all of these, once you craft it into your speech, then you have the opportunity on stage to express. If those are just put as narrations in your speech, then you just breeze through it when you speak. So when you are scripting your speech, that's when you plug in, give yourself the opportunity to do these kind of expressions. If you want to use props, for example. Props are a good way of decorating your presentation. Don't put a prop just for the sake of it. If it adds value to your particular moment in the speech, then use it. Now we have Dhananjay Hetirachi here. You see, this is a scene of him throwing that flower right at the end. He starts with that flower as well, right? So that flower added value to him because he started out with, you and I are not very different from this flower. Just like this flower is unique, we are unique. And that was his starting, right? And then he breaks it and all of that. So that prop added value to that moment. That's when the prop is most effective. If you want to say, okay, I was feeling red, and then you show a red t-shirt, it adds no value, nothing at all, right? It's just for the sake of using something you have put there. So props which add value to that particular scene are the ones which are most useful. Pauses, you know that pauses are important, right? Pauses are like catches in cricket matches. They win the game for you. Can anybody give me some moments where pauses could be effective? So where would you plug in your pause when you're delivering your speech? What are some areas where you think we could plug in some pauses? You can either put it on the chat or you could unmute and just shout it out. Where do you think
the punchline? After the punchline.
After the punchline of a joke, correct? Yeah. Shiva says when we talked about an emotional incident, absolutely right, Shiva. Yes.
And sometime when you tell a very deep thing, give them time to.
When you have a powerful thought or a statement that you want the audience to ponder upon for a bit, a pause is the perfect thing to put there. Absolutely right, Dr. Jaydeep. All right, so we covered three things there. One was emotion, one was punchline, and the third one was a deep thought or a poignant statement. All three are absolutely right. Emotions, when you want the audience to feel it, you make your emotional statement and then you pause right after the last word. So when you do that, it's important to remember that when you're scripting it, make sure that your powerful word is at the end of the sentence. That's the most impactful. If you put it in the middle and then you have a couple of words after that, you are making it weaker, right? The impact is dissolved. It dissipates a little bit. So bring your strongest word at the end of your sentence when you're scripting it, and a pause immediately after that. Second point we talked about was humor. You have a pause before your punchline and after your punchline. Before the punchline, it creates a curiosity, the thought in the mind, which allows you to put in your audience to react, laugh, which is what you want from it. If you continue, then obviously they stop laughing, right? So pause before and after. Poignant statement, you want the audience to ponder over it, think about it, then the pause is most important there. All right, perfect. So let's move on. We've talked a little bit about decorating your speech. Now let's see how we plug this in to our earlier model that we had. Now, if you see the big arrows that we had were transitions. A good way to use the transitions is to have questions to the audience, right? Get the audience involved in your speech by asking them rhetoric questions. Maybe you don't need a response to it, but you just want them to think about it. So see how you can involve the audience. Now, if you remember Dhananjay Hetirachi's speech again, he had that moment where he asked, how many of you have an emotional mother? Put them all together, you get my mom, right? So again, it's just a question. People raise their hands and he responded to it. See if you can get the audience involved in some way in between your speech. This does a lot of advantages. One is, you know that they're still with you over 7 minutes. So have something in between where they're involved, something for them to do. All right. Now let's move on. This is you had the old model that I showed you of how your opening, body and closing looks like. This is now the new model where you have the opening statements done. You have boxes for each of your stories. So when you are actually scripting it in your Word document, try to box out your story so you know whether you're covering each part in it. Now we spoke about decorating your speech with content, right? So what I'm going to do first is, we spoke about dialogue. So I would use a different color for dialogues where you have a person speaking or you addressing the audience, have a different color so you know that you have enough dialogue in your speech. If everything looks the same color, you don't know whether you have dialogues or not. You could use apostrophes, inverted commas, etc., but those are difficult to trace. If you use a different color, you're easy to trace. So, you know, in your 2-page Word document, okay, I have dialogue here, I have dialogue here, I have dialogue here. Good. Humor. I have humor here, I have humor here, I have humor here. Or humor does not guarantee that the audience will laugh. You're hoping it does, but at least you've put it in there. You've put the effort, right? So kudos for the effort. Have a different color for humor where you're trying to have humor. So you know that you have enough places in your speech where you're attempting humor. Your power phrase. Make sure that you have your power phrase at appropriate moments in your speech and definitely at the ending. That's how you know. And you see, all of this comes when you are scripting your speech itself. These are not going to come if the speech is in your mind. You've got to put it down on paper. You've got to structure it in such a way that you're able to see all of these things and make sure they are there, right? Now, one thing I want you to notice is when you have these different colors, it's easy to observe in your speech. Okay, this place is completely black. I've got to do something here. Let me revisit. Let me see if there's something I can do there. If you have power phrases repeating, that is saving you space, number of words, which allows you to emote more. We all know that your international speech is for 7 minutes. Different people speak in different rates. My suggestion to all of you would be write for 6 minutes and you deliver that speech in 6 minutes, 30 seconds. Or write for 5 minutes, 30 seconds and deliver that speech in 6 minutes, 30 seconds, right? Don't write for 7 minutes and try to deliver that in 6.5. No, write lesser and try to deliver that in with more expressions, more emotions, pauses, effects, everything put together, right? It's not just a number of words, it's what you do on stage that matters, right? So you want to write for lesser and present more, right? Okay, closing is where you want to put your realization message, and definitely you want to have the power phrase back there. Rules for the power phrase we already know. It has to be small, 6 to 8 words, it has to have a certain rhythm to it. It should be memorable. That's when it's most effective. So try to use this structure. By the way, whenever this meeting is anyway recorded, so do access the recording. Take as much notes as you want. If you want to take screenshots, pictures, feel free to do that. There's no proprietary material here. This is all just my stuff. Moving on now. Now we come to the final bit of it. Why do I say final? When you are scripting your speech, the last thing that I want you to work on is the opening and the closing, right? I know I did say start with the end in mind. The end is not the closing. The end is the impact of the speech, right? What is the result that you want from the speech? The result is only I want to be first place, fair enough. The result is I want to influence the audience, fair enough, whatever it is. The opening and the closing is probably what you should write last. And I would say of all the things, write the opening at the extreme last. Because you want to definitely create an attention grabbing opening, have the impact right at the beginning. You see our dear friend, does anyone remember his name? The gentleman who we see on the picture, who has his clothes on in the wrong order. World champion of public speaking. Does anyone remember his name?
Darren.
Darren Tay, absolutely right, AD Rajesh. Darren Tay had his speech outsmart, outlast, and he shocked everyone with his opening where he put his clothes on in the reverse order, as you can see. Now, you don't need an opening as shocking as that. However, the idea is to grab the audience's attention right at the beginning. If you remember Muhammad Ghaitani's speech, he had a cigarette up there and he was acting as if he was going to light it up. Another shocking opening. See, it does not have to be extremely shocking. However, the idea is that you're able to grab the audience's attention right at the beginning. This allows you time to set into the story, what is going to come up next, and bring the audience into your speech right at the beginning. You want them on your side. The secret is to the opening is that the game time is the first 30 seconds. So you want to spend enough time crafting that first 30 seconds when you're writing your speech. Because here, is when the audience decides whether they're going to spend the next 7 minutes listening to you or go back to their mobile phones and WhatsApp messages and shopping lists or chat with the guest who just walked in. This is when they're deciding. So if you lose the first 30 seconds, it's difficult to win your audience back after that. But if you win the first 30 seconds, whatever the content that comes on, if it goes up and down also, they're still with you. So then it's just a matter of holding on to them, right? So you want to capitalize on the first 30 seconds. So when you're scripting your speech, finish off the body and then come back to the opening and see how you can maximize. By then you will have enough ideas or familiarity with your content to come up with an intriguing opening. So keep that till the end and then come back and write the opening. Maximize the impact in the first 30 seconds at any cost. That is the game changer for you, right? The last part is, of course, closing. We all know the fundamental basic that you have to tie the opening to the closing. The reason is any loop that you open, you have to close, right? Otherwise, it just loses its effect and just lies there. So you want to tie it up, make it a full circle, complete experience. This is not just in speeches, by the way. If you watch any movie, you can see that whenever something comes, it always closes or repeats itself somewhere later on, because there has to be a complete closure to any thought that you put into your audience's mind. It's a basic NLP technique about closing loops. So tie your opening to your closing. If you have your power phrase, the phrase that pays, tagline, make sure it's there right at the end. Somewhere, doesn't have to be the very last statement, but somewhere at the end, it's got to be there. And where do you finish the speech? You finish the speech like the gentleman on the picture here, up close, center of the stage, right up front, near, as close to the audience as the stage permits, hands spread out wide, up close to the audience. This is your closing position. This is where you want to end your speech, not at the back, not at the side, not in any other position. You want to be right up close to your audience, because the ending is where you are leaving the audience, and then you come to the ultimate realization that in the end, it was always about the audience. The story was yours, the message was yours, but who was it for? It was for the audience. So that's where you want to end it. If you remember Dhananjay Hetirachi's speech, I see something in you. Throughout his speech, the different gurus in his story are telling him, I see something in you, but I don't know what it is. I see something in you. In the end, he tells the audience, when I look at you, I see something in you, but I don't know what it is. So in the end, the last statement has to be crafted in such a way that it is addressed to the audience. You can say we, fair enough. We includes the audience and yourself. Better if you can say you, right? But either of these work, we or you, both will work. But in the end, your final statement needs to be addressed to the audience, because that's who this whole story was always about. And when you script your speech, spend time on those final statements, because that's what the audience leaves with, the last word. And this has to bring energy to the crowd. The reason being, I will tell you, what happens once you finish your speech? Once you've said your last statement, what happens? Can anybody unmute and just shout it out? What happens immediately after your last word? You can either put it in the chat.
Yeah,
the applause, correct? You're absolutely right. The applause happens. What else happens other than the applause?
Audience reflects.
Audience reflects, thinks about it. So the applause, audience reaction, all of it is the same thing. I'll tell you something else important that happens after your last word. After your last word, the judges start marking you. So the energy you leave them with is the difference between a 60 and a 70, or a 75 and an 85. If your last sentence is low energy and low tone, automatically that's where they're going to mark you from. They're going to review your speech from that energy level. But if you leave everyone at a gusto, at an emotional high, you've brought the energy up, they're all rallying, bouncing around, imagine where your marks are going to be. Use those sentences to your impact. This is where the scripting makes a difference there. Take some time, craft that last statement out for you. It's got to be impactful. It's got to be about the audience. It's got to be impactful, right? So craft out in your, when you're scripting, craft out how you're going to use that last speech. So just to recap everything, messages that matter are the most important thing before you start your speech itself. The content has to be fact. You want to be sure what you want your audience to feel, act, and think. For storytelling, you use the 5C storytelling model. Does anyone remember what the 5Cs are? If you can, just unmute and shout it out. What are the 5Cs? Yeah, you got to unmute yourself, guys. Yeah, Mini, I can see your lips moving. Yeah, curiosity.
Curiosity, characters, conflict,
cure, change, and conflict. You're absolutely right. Good job, Rubel. Thankfully, somebody was listening. All right. So the different speech purposes, you know, are to entertain, inform, persuade, and inspire. You got to use these at the correct places in your speech. You got to decorate your speech with your language by writing for the year, by pauses. Rule of 3. Open with a bang, grab the audience's attention, write this at the end only. Close the deal. In the end, who was it all about? It was always about the audience. And if you're able to apply all of these, that ugly looking trophy right in the middle, yep, that's your prize that you're going to get. And all of this is won by scripting it a little different from what you always used to do before. All right, so that's my session for today. We can take some time and have some questions here. I hope you've been able to follow through. If there's anything that you have not understood, feel free to ask. I'm happy to repeat it again. Usually, if we don't have any questions, it means one of two things. Either I was very clear or nobody understood a thing.
The word conflict.
Yep.
You used now.
Yep.
Clarify it, please, once again.
So conflict basically is the challenge that you are overcoming. So if we are, for example, there was a story in between I told about, you know, you used to spend a lot of time with your grandparents when you were kids, your grandmother. Now you moved over here and she passed away. You were not able to see her again. This is just a very short way. However, the conflict here is the death of your grandmother. That is the challenge that you faced. And you were not able to overcome it at that point of time, right? So then how do you overcome it? So you overcome it with, you know, some changes that you make in your lifestyle, that you spend time with your loved ones, you are able to, you know, prioritize the work that you do, etc. So conflict basically means any challenge that you're facing, the challenge that you're overcoming, which is the crux of your story. How you overcame that, that's the message you're going to give. So the conflict here is the challenge that you face.
Okay, in that sense, no, I see something that in that speech, what is that conflict?
Okay, so in I see something in you, if you take each story one by one. Now, the first story was that, you know, he failed in school, he was put in jail. So that conflict is escalating over there. It starts with him in jail. Then it tells about, you know, failing in school, putting in jail. And what is the change that comes? His father takes him to that accountant. So the accountant is the guru here, or his father and the accountant both are the gurus here. They advise him and give him some work to do, and that changes his outlook completely. After that, the change happens. He learns about, you know, geography, the world, history, and that was much better than what he learned in school. Yeah, you remember that scene? So the conflict was there, then there was a cure, and then there was the change. Similarly, in the next story is when he joins a Toastmasters club, right? So he's graduated from school, but he can't find a job because he doesn't know what to do. That is his conflict. So when again he's lost, his father takes him to the Toastmasters club. There he sees that old man who advises him, come 2 weeks and we'll find something special in you. That's the cure. And the change is that, you know, he discovers that he loves to speak, and that makes him a teacher. That's the change.
Yes.
So this is how the conflict, So the conflict does not have to be something very big. It's just the challenge that you're overcoming that is shown.
In this story, all the conflicts has common quality.
See, basically how you overcome your conflict and who or whatever, based on that is what your message is going to be.
They asked to explain about power of 3.
Yeah, power of 3 basically is, you know, see, the idea, the concept behind the power of 3 is that the first one is the first time you say it, you're stating the thing. The second time you're saying it's you're reinforcing the thing. And the third time you're saying it's confirming the thing. So if you put it in threes, it adds more impact. It's just a type of method technique that you can use to restate or reinforce what you're trying to say. You see it in, in historical statements as well, power statements. Like, Julius Caesar had that I came, no, Alexander the Great, I believe, sorry. I came, I saw, I conquered. It's the power of three. Similarly, it's used in many different, techniques as well. Like the examples I gave of having 3 stories instead of 1 or 2. 3 stories means it's just repetitive and it reinforces the point. But if you use it in small sentences with alliterations, it also sounds very nice. So you can have, you can say that person was iconic, interesting, and imaginative, or he was expressive, emotional, and excellent. So it just reinforces that point, and it sounds, it's auditorily also, it's advantageous to you to use the power of 3.
Hashim,
Any other questions?
how many stories do you recommend in a speech?
So the number of stories is actually completely dependent upon you. You can have one story with maybe 3 scenes in that story, or multiple scenes in that story. It depends on how long your stories are. You could have short stories, then you can have 3 in there. Otherwise, you could have one single story that you use. Now, for example, Dhananjay Hettiaraj had 3 stories in his speech. But if you see Prasilan Vasilev's Change by a Tire, he had just 1 story of him. But he had 3 scenes in that story, multiple scenes in that story. So it actually depends upon you. There is no hard and fast rule. Sometimes the issue with one story is that, if the audience is not convinced with that one story, then your speech is not very effective. Whereas if you have multiple stories, it allows you to reinforce that message. Depending upon how you want to structure your speech. Ideally, I would say that you have 7 minutes, so you have something like 650 words is probably the ideal number of words that you can have. Like I said, for a contest, in practice, you want to aim for 6 minutes 30 seconds. If you're exceeding 6 minutes 30 seconds in practice, what happens in the contest is when you're trying to add more emotion, when you're trying to have more impactful pauses, and if your audience reacts to some of your humor, etc., you may lose some time. So the closer you get to the red, the more pressure you put on yourself. The last thing you want is to be under pressure there. So I would say aim for 6 minutes 30 at practice. If you're aiming for 6 minutes 30 at practice, write for 5 minutes 30 and deliver that in 6:30. So write lesser, put more impact, emotions, internalize those words, and try to deliver it better. That adds more value than putting more words. So if one story is all that you can fit in, fair enough, but do that with a lot of effect. That adds more value than adding multiple.
You said when you showed the story map, there was a story, then subpoint, and then transition. And then again, when you showed some other model, the subpoint was not there. So is the subpoint needed or not?
No,
and
see,
if it is, then give an example.
The subpoint it depends upon your, how you're going to structure your speech. Now, let me give you an example here. If you were covering a topic like, say, for example, let your children follow their dreams. Simple topic. So that could be your main point. However, your sub-point could be that sometimes we stop them because of fear. Sometimes we stop them because we want them to do things our way. Sometimes we try to live our dreams through them. So these could be your 3 sub-points, in which case you may have a different, supporting example for each of these sub-points. Alternatively, you could just have one story from your life and summarize it by saying that, let your children follow their dreams and you don't stop them. So it depends on how you want to structure it, whether you want to use sub-points or you just want to stick to your main points.
If you use sub-points, then it does become, elaborate.
It could become longer. So, it will depend upon the subject that you're taking. If the subject is vast and you need sub-points to explain it in its totality, then you may go for it and maybe shorten your examples. But, my suggestion always would be to avoid too many sub-points. Keep it to the one single main point and have multiple examples for that if you want. That would be my suggestion. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Before the next question, audience, please switch on your videos. Our Zoom Master is ready to take a beautiful picture. Please, everyone, switch on your video. Now you can ask questions. Any more questions?
Everybody is posing. That's why they have paused the question and answer session also.
I'm just giving a pause right now because this is the time to call our PQD. We are privileged to have her address. Distinguished Toastmaster Rani Abdurrab. Madam, please, 2 words.
Hello, and thank you so
Hi.
much. 2 words. It was fabulous and fantastic. Always a pleasure being with you guys, and of course, Hashim is a champ in every sense of the word. I mean, no matter what topic you give him, he always creates a masterpiece. Thank you so much for enriching our knowledge. I've learned a lot today, and I'm sure everyone who was with us today has basically learned a lot on how to basically write a script. As you said, a script, you think of a movie, it's more than a movie. It's basically much bigger than that. And thank you so much, Hashim, for giving us the tips and just dedicating your time and basically demonstrating the real essence of being a member in this wonderful organization. And to divisional director and all of the people who basically invested their time on a Wednesday evening, despite your busy schedule. Thank you so much for joining us and learning as well in this wonderful journey. And over to you, our dear divisional directors. Over to you, Chanel.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your quick address. We are really privileged to have you here. Ladies and gentlemen,
Honor
this
is mine. Thank
concludes our session. We are very happy for TLI, Toastmasters Leadership Institute, Distinguished Toastmaster Vinod Panikar for giving us an opportunity to pull in with TLI. And sincere thanks to our club, our division member, one and only champion, DTAC winner, Distinguished Toastmaster Hashim Haleem. I don't know, 5th time DTM, going to achieve very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here on a Wednesday evening. And I'm sure it will add lots of value to your Toastmasters journey. Looking forward to meet lots of champions from District 105. Let's blast during this contest. So once again, thank you so much, all the leaders of District 105. Thank you and good night.
Thank you everyone. Good night.
Thank
Good night. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Drive
Hashim.
safe. Whoever is driving, take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Very crisp and clear.
Yep.
Crisp.
Thank
I managed to overshoot time in that also.
Yeah, one hour crisp.
1 hour crisp.
No, but there was lots. Content was really, that itself, he has brought it into 1 hour. In fact, I was wondering in 40 minutes how you will finish it. Because writing a script is not easy.
Yeah.
And the way you have spoken, the way you've given it, it actually helps even the newcomer. Not a seasoned Toastmaster, even a very new Toastmaster who has not given any, has not attempted any contests. For the new Toastmasters also is very good.
Giving challenge to himself
He's
by giving
challenging.
all the tips to all the Toastmasters to compete with DTM Hashim.
From next presentation, I'll put a last slide with my phone number and details. Contact me for private lessons. I'll give you more secret tips that I don't present.
True, we should.
All right.
But always, when you share whatever you know, basically your knowledge, actually you develop. Because even of the preparation, when you're preparing it, some points will trigger, this I did not, I could have done this way, I could have done it better. This will automatically come. So sharing is the best. If you don't share these points, you will never remember.
True.
Yep.
Very true.
Maybe that is the reason
Hashim
Hashim
bhai.
is always winning. Now I know the trick. Anyway.
Thank you. Thank
Take
you.
rest.
Alright.
1 hour you have spoken.
Let's
Thank you
close.
very much.
Yep.
Good night.
See you guys.
Now
Bye.
take
Bye.
rest, relax.
Yes, relax.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And you drive safely, Shanil.
I just reached. Now I have to switch
okay.
off.
Right,
Okay,
see you guys.
carry on.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. 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 Bye.
Good
Good
night.
night.